The California housing market is a total head scratcher. You have inventory rising across the state. Homes are sitting a little bit longer. Price cuts are happening. But at the exact same time, prices are continuing to break through record highs. And in some areas, homes are still getting multiple offers. Recently here in San Francisco, a condo sold for $1 million over asking in 2026. So what's actually going on here? Because this is not a normal market shift. It's actually something completely different. And if you're trying to buy, sell, or get a mortgage right now, this matters more than ever. Let's first start with the basics as we try and make some sense of this market. Normally, when inventory goes up, prices come down. It's kind of simple. When rates go up, demand drops. Again, that's how it's supposed to work, but California marches to its own beat. Right now, inventory is rising. The days on market is starting to rise, but prices are still near high levels. So if you use logic and how you think, that should not be happening. Sales are still historically low. Affordability is near the worst we've ever seen, and yet prices haven't cracked. So what's going on, guys? To understand this, you have to realize something very important, and that is that this is not one market anymore. By the way, guys, if you are trying to figure out what this market actually looks like for you, for your family, for investment purposes, or because you're trying to get on the property ladder, please reach out to me and let our team help you. You can reach me on Instagram at Arjun Mortgage or contact website information all in the description below. We can break down your numbers, put together a strategy, and help you come up with something that works for you and your family. And one last favor, guys, if you would please like this video and also subscribe to the channel. It will help us reach more people like you with useful content about how to break into this market and making sense of it all, and ultimately serve more consumers as they try and break in. I appreciate you guys watching. Now let's continue. So I mentioned California has split, and it's actually not just two markets. It's realistically three, and they're all happening at the same time. The first market is the affordability crisis. Most buyers right now cannot qualify. They can't afford the payment, and they're completely sidelined. And this is where and why demand looks a little bit weak. Then there's the second market, which is the competitive market. So happening all at the same time are desirable homes that are move-in ready at good locations, and they're priced just right. Those homes are still getting multiple offers. They're still moving fast. So for that segment, the demand isn't gone. It's just concentrated. And then there's market three, which very few people talk about or truly understand. And this is the hidden layer, and it's the markets that never actually hit the market. So what's happening there? These are properties that are being passed down through inheritance. Homes that have been owned within a family system for a long period of time and are held within an estate actually get passed on to the heirs. And those heirs have no incentive to sell the home because they're inheriting, thanks to Prop 13, the low property tax basis. Now, it may not have been low at the time, but currently it's very low because if they were subject to current market prices, the taxes would make the deal not make sense at all. In fact, it would make more sense to just sell it and be rid of it. So what do you get at the end of this? You get owners holding on to property because they have no incentive to sell. So you got this entire layer of housing supply that technically exists, but it never actually really hits the market. And that leads to still one of the biggest forces that's affecting this market, and that is the lock-in effect. Roughly 70% of homeowners are still sitting on very low interest rates, 2.5%, 3%, 3.5%, even 4% is considered incredibly low. I mean, how many of us would trade for a rate that low? And if they sell, their payment is going to explode. So why would they? Now, I'll tell you this, we personally are in a perfect example of this. We've lived in our home in Marin County for 9 years. And when I run the math to do a move into a home that's going to be a lot more expensive, but only a little bit bigger, and at current market interest rates, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I'm not the only one like this. There are a lot of families and individuals that are stuck for the same reasons. Now, there's a second layer to all this, and this is the people that are leaving California, but they're not actually selling. They're keeping their property, renting it out, using it as a second home, depreciating it so they come out ahead on their taxes, and claiming residency in another more tax-friendly state. Now, as a disclaimer here, guys, this has always been a trend, but it's a lot more intense now because people are really truly trying to hold on to their wealth, get ahead, and find multiple ways to pay the government less money. So people aren't exiting the market, they're just changing their address. So given all of this news and some of the sentiment out there is that the market is starting to feel a little bit recession-like. And why would they be feeling that? And this is where people are starting to get a little bit confused because homes sit a little bit longer, price reductions in some markets are happening, and deals are getting a little bit slower. So it feels like a downturn, but the prices are still high, which is why, in fact, it's not a downturn. It's just a totally different market. And this is what happens, guys, when demand drops, but supply never actually comes back to the table. So economists have a term for this, and you'll start to see this and hear about it more in the media, in news reporting. I've put out a lot of short form content on my other channels, and that is called the K-shaped economy. So when you look at a K, can't really tell which way you're looking at it, but for me, it's this way. For you, it's gonna be that way. The top ring of the K represents the segment of the economy where people feel fine. They feel like their wages and wealth or earning power is continuing to grow and expand, They feel confident about the money that they're spending. Their job prospects feel safe. And then the bottom line of the K represents those that are feeling squeezed by this economy. They feel that prices and affordability are still too high. Now, the difference between the two is those that are on the top section of the K own assets. And that's probably why you're watching this channel, because you're interested in housing or trying to find ways to break into it. So just recognize that that is always going to be your ticket out, owning hard assets. Now, if you've watched any of my content, you know that whenever I spell out things like this, I'm always looking for the opportunity, the silver lining. And every market presents an opportunity, no matter how gloomy it might actually appear. And so what is the opportunity here in this current market, given what we're talking about today? Now, compared to 2021, 2022, and basically everything that came in the wake of the COVID market, which was a totally abnormal market, but one worth paying attention to here for purposes of this discussion, buyers have more options. They have more negotiating power, and there's less competition for those homes. So it's not that you're buying into a less expensive or cheaper market, you're just buying into a less competitive one. Because the reality is that payments are still high, affordability is still tight. So the smart strategy with all this is recognize that as a buyer, this is a huge opportunity for you, because a rate is temporary, but that sales price you get to negotiate just once. And what I mean by just once is the concessions that come with it, the credits, the overall price itself. You can renegotiate an interest rate countless times over the lifetime that you're in that property, and that matters. So plan for flexibility. You can always refinance later. And of course, do that if and when it makes sense. Now, the next bit of advice that's critical for buyers is to recognize that just because you're approved for, say, $1 million does not mean that you should go out and spend $1 million. In fact, if you've worked with us or you're about to work with us, I'm going to tell you right now, and this is an important part of our dialogue and back and forth with you, is that we want you to spend $900,000 or even $800,000. One, because you never know what the future looks like. Two, you don't want to be house poor and be resentful over the fact that you bought this house and have buyer's remorse. And three, we want you to enjoy it. If you're gonna have a home and stop paying your landlord's mortgage, then you shouldn't feel like you're stuck in it and you have to eat top ramen all the time to cut corners. You should be able to enjoy your lifestyle and have it grow and it kind of expand into this new space that you're in, this new chapter in your life. But you won't hear this talked about a lot, and it's very important. So make sure you shop well below what you're actually qualified for. Next is be very clear on what your job stability looks like. In a market like California, your income stability matters just as much as that great income that you have. And what I mean by stability is the prospect that you will not just have this job tomorrow, but as long in the foreseeable future as you can chart out. That's really important, especially in an environment where there's so many new companies and startups. Companies can come and go in a flash and can look great today and look really crappy tomorrow. So be very careful and have a very firm and honest understanding of where you sit when it comes to your employment. Now let's transition into sellers, because if you already own, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. And here's the biggest problem. Let's just start with that. You're sitting on a 3% rate. So to move, you're going to spend a lot more money for a house that might be just a little bit bigger, and you're going to jump to a 6% rate. That is a massive payment increase. And this is why so many people feel stuck, just like yours truly, I said earlier in this video. We're stuck for the exact same reasons. The math just isn't there. So what ends up happening? You get fewer move-up buyers, you get strange inventory patterns, and even more hesitation. But the reality is, guys, is that deals are still happening. They're just structured much differently. And they're structured with rate buydowns, concessions, credits. If you're a seller, you got to think about what will it actually take to get a buyer to feel truly enticed and like this is a great deal. And you can do this without feeling like you're giving everything away. You just have to negotiate better. So it's not that this is a dead market or anything like that, and no seller should think that. It's very much the opposite. It's just more of a complicated and nuanced one. So let's zoom out here, guys, and just talk about, as we land the plane, why this market feels so abnormal. Well, when you have rising inventory, but supply is still constrained, that's going to feel abnormal. When demand is down, but homes still sell fast in certain pockets, that's going to look very abnormal. And when you have people leaving but not selling, prices remaining high, even in a slowdown, all of that is going to make a market feel abnormal. So this isn't a crash, guys. It's not a boom. It's something in between. And that's why it feels so abnormal. One of these days, they'll come up with a name for what this market was. But for now, we'll just call it that. An abnormal market with some tremendous opportunity. Now, again, if you're still trying to figure out what all of this means to you, please reach out to us on Instagram at Arjun Mortgage or through the contact information listed below in the description, and allow us to do some work for you in helping you figure out a strategy and a plan that makes sense so you can break into this market and get your piece of it. And if you're serious about buying a home here in 2026, make sure you watch this next video right here when I break down the brutal and honest truth about what it actually takes to get a mortgage in 2026 and the hurdles that most people never see coming. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll catch you on the next video.